Welcome to Informed by Alan Roebke, this 19th day of October 2018 for this coming Sunday on KUNUJ. And what I want to do today, kind of look at things that happened for the week and give you a little insight on my world and what I'm up to and how we go forward on being informed by Alan Roebke. And the first thought I have is I got an email today from Governor Dayton about the unemployment rate in Minnesota. He states that job growth in Minnesota, 313,100 new Minnesota jobs added since 2011 when Governor Dayton took office. An unemployment rate, the lowest since 1999 in the case of Minnesota, that's 2.8%. New Minnesota jobs added in 18, 37,000. And then they go on to talk about our ACT scores and our high school students. They kind of held steady or maybe dropped a little bit. And for Education Minnesota, MnSchool, our technical schools, state colleges, University of Minnesota, and our church schools, of course, church colleges, I think that's a negative. You know, as long as we've been taking ACT tests or tests after you basically completed your high school years, we should have understood by now that we're not a stair-step gain in what our students know. We're kind of locked in the 70s, as I would like to point out, and when we look at the whole spectrum of students, we should be educating them from day one about what? Getting a job and taking care of themselves, and especially some of our students of color that live in the past and got a grudge on their shoulder. And yes, I'm talking about our African American students more so than any. And so when we look at this, when we look at education in general, I think we as parents, grandparents, concerned citizens, we're failing the next generation. We have been in the education field, in the modern education field, long enough now that we should have a better stair step of learning for the whole spectrum of students. And they all need some insight on this ACT testing system of what they need to know and learn about. And we're the biggest thing we're seeing in education today on all facets of it is we do not teach why to our students. And a big portion of the successful educators is they teach why, and they teach in a pictorial viewpoint of what students should know. And when we look at this pictorial viewpoint, I think it's essential, folks, that we add coursework that's on a video monitor rather than coursework from each and every teacher trying to put into our various students' mind what they should know. And when we see our students, as well as many of you out there, kind of lost in your cell phone today, it just goes to show that with the right approach to educating our next generation, taking the best of the best and just presenting them. In fact, one of the things I watched this morning on morning TV were, what is it, the TED show, or where they have these great speakers, these great content people. They give them, 18 minutes to present a topic. And they're talking what these podcast type things were. The number now, I think it's in the billions of people worldwide watching these video presentations from people like Bill Gates and many of our elected officials, both black, Asian, Latino, and so on, that people are just, they grasp these interesting people, these people of passion. Yet we all have teacher friends and have certain teachers that were a great influence in our lives, but we're not capturing that people. Why aren't we capturing the greatness of our individual education? I remember my own miserable education where I never conquered phonics. I never conquered the ability to write. But after graduation from high school, I had a great passion for agriculture and doing things, and even as a kid, I think I had great insight, because some of my fellow classmates now in his 50 years would come up and, what are those old people always talking to you, Al, for? Oh, I don't know, I say. And well, they were always asking me questions if what I think as a kid. And I always get just outraged when I hear my fellow evangelicals that I believe our churches have more evangelicals, like I talked about the one program that do it our way and shut up, but that's true in our total system today. But of people asking me questions, or what would I do? And I was just a young kid. I even had stock market questions from my old dentist, Doc Friedel. And in fact, he used to pull me out of school a couple times until my dad finally came in. You cannot pull him out of school to get a stock tip. And he can only come in here if he needs dental work. And Doc would always say, well, I always check his teeth and give him a free cleaning or something. He gives me good stock information. And I always laughed of some of my evangelicals that were probably more evangelicals than evangelicals, would talk about a church on Chicago Avenue, an ELC Lutheran church there, and I went to what they called a prayer meeting, or not a prayer meeting, a Bible study, I guess it was. And I'm not into that stuff for the most part, but I've read the Bible many times, but I don't want to get lost in reading the Bible. I want to serve my Lord and Savior, and hopefully as his most despised servant on Judgment Day, he will say, well, the head usher, Mr. Erickson, and St. Peter said there's one spot left, Roebke, and they said I should give it to you, so I'm going to give it to you. And so that's probably my only way into paradise, but it's still a pathway, as they say. But anyway, when they would talk about the mission of Christ, or Christ's ministry, was about 3 years long. And 3 years, or maybe even a year, I can't even remember what that. I mean, I just sat and looked at those people, and probably everybody there had a master's degree or doctoral degree, and there was a few retired preachers, and they were all shaking their head. Yeah, the Christ ministry was either a year or 3 years, something like that. And I just sit there and shook my head. What are you people talking about? I finally said. And I said, the Son of Man came to Joseph and Mary, and you're saying it, as he grew up and a kid, nobody came up to him and asked him things? What about the deal where the Pharisees were listening to him as a kid? I mean, people listened to me as a kid. And just think of Christ himself. Of course, his whole entire life was his ministry, his teaching to us. And so what I'm getting at, from either a religious standpoint or an education standpoint, or the ability to push man forward, we have to do a much better job. And when I look at the situation in our world now, with election coming up, and if Trump doesn't get a House that's Republican, even though I'm furious at the Republicans as I'm furious about the Democrat, the Trump administration is going to be dead in the water for the next 2 years. The Chinese are just going to laugh. The North Korean guy is going to laugh. Iran is going to laugh. The Islamic world is just going to laugh at us as a bunch of idiots that don't know how to get anything done. And that includes all our foreign competitors, whether it's Japan or Europe or Brazil or South American countries and so on. And so when we have a a world that is depending on us, or even if they're not depending on us, we're in a world where we have to get the job done. Because why? We put in every dollar in God we trust. And we still claim to have more Christians than probably any realistic nation of the world, or any major nation or region of the world. And so we have an obligation to see that our democracy continues to move forward and serve our people. And that's true in the State House. And there's a lot of things that have to change, of course, to really fulfill that mission. And I did this little radio program here to try to get some influence on the election, but obviously I failed. From a taxation standpoint of Minnesota Charities, as far as getting a farm policy in place, that just a one-year option based on sugar policy that I sold Tip O'Neill, and get some things done. But I have to jump to the next level, and just a couple quick comments on this election process. Without a doubt, Eric Paulson, the congressman there from the Twin Cities, has become the king of dirt. You talk about a person that's not willing to even talk to the public on his 30-second commercials. Just an outrage. I just can't believe it, and why the Republicans aren't grabbing him by the neck. How can you represent people if you won't even talk to the people? And which he's not doing on his commercials. And then the other thing that catches me is that Tina Smith, who I've interviewed here, I think you can go to YouTube/Inform TV channel, and I questioned her at the bar out here at the Carlos Creek Winery, took her, filmed her whole tour when she was going through the winery. But the thing that just baffles me, and why I'm going to vote for Housley, even though she's got her limitations, is the fact that she talks in her commercials. She's on a listening tour. People, when Southern Minnesota Beet Sugar Board called me in as a young kid and said, "Roebke, we gotta send you out to Washington and get us a price for a product. We got to do something or we're going to fold." And they didn't send me out there because I was a good listener, which I was, because my handicap of not being a good reader or a good writer, I always had to be a fantastic listener. And people say, "That SOB Roebke never listened to anybody. He just talks and does." And the reality, that handicap that I still have, was my strongest suit, because just a few key words would automatically explain to me the whole subject matter. And here we got Tina Smith, that I hope you vote against, is on a listening tour. She doesn't know what to do. Just like the St. Paul mayor, they just elected the guy, and the first thing he did was call everybody in to ask, "What should I do now?" How ridiculous. And Amy Klobuchar, of course, has got her TV ad on of we got to protect these soldiers that were sitting in a burn pit and destroying things. I mean, she's been there for 12 years. Why hasn't she looked at what our military practices are? And why hasn't she delivered, as well as Colin Peterson and Tim Walz and Tina Smith that's on, why haven't we seen how much money we have given the 3 premier farm families of Renville County in crop insurance subsidies? Or for that matter, all the people. But don't do it to EWG.org. Do it through our Farm Service Agency, through the USDA. Show this massive amounts of money. There was a deal in the Kansas Fed today about how these farmers are borrowing and borrowing more and more, bigger loans all the time. And the reality is, why are they growing? The technology, of course, allows them. But the reality is, we cover their risk, lock, stock, and barrel with this crop insurance, that we are paying 50 to 60% of the premium. And yet nobody's talking about that. And we need to look at things in history here. We should be asking, what was the deal with Southern Minnesota Beet Sugar Co-op after I was off the board, where they had 2 different times when they had frozen beets, and the taxpayer picked up the tab. Why aren't we having an FBI investigation into those activities? Because we could investigate a Supreme Court justice or a judge. We sure as heck should be investigating what happened in southern Minnesota, Beet Sugar Co-op, when their crop froze and they continued to harvest the whole crop all the way to the Canadian border. How can that be? How do we not have an open and independent press like Inform TV to dig into things like that? And so think about that this election year as you go to vote. And in this process, I want to put a plug in for CTV and the 4 electric co-ops that are involved in this. They have a publication. There's 23 cents a day. Goes a long way for TV viewers, and you people out there listening that belong to those cooperatives, or you have money, send them a check for $100 so poor people can have free TV, because there's a lot of working stiffs like myself that can't afford that. I give Selective TV $125 a year just so I can go to their meeting and have a little bit of input, but they don't listen to me. So I want you to do that. And why do I want you to do that? Is this experiment on radio is coming to an end. Just had a nice email from our friends Jim Bartle there at Bartles at KNUJ, and kind of saying, can you bring on a second voice? Well, no, I'm not going to bring on an Alan Giebert or anything like that. He's no friend of mine or yours as far as I'm concerned, and or anybody else. I don't make any money. It costs me $140 a week to do this. When I was on TV here, I had enough advertisers, and I was about to get a lot more when I got pulled off the air by North Dakota Public TV, as well as Selective here, only because I did 2 stories that neither one of them liked, and it was about their general operation and this buyout of a big portion of our TV frequencies. And there's a German engineer that made it very plain that it didn't have to happen, or it didn't have to happen in the way it happened, but it happened. And when we shrink channels down, it means we should only have one channel that has up to the ability of 6 to 8 sub-channels on it for religion. Only one channel that's available nationwide, not just here in Minnesota, for ethnic content. And the other thing, so I want you to know, and you're being formed by Alan Roebke, and I'm open to everybody. I live in an open world, and I try to practice that as an evangelical, as a Christian first. And what I want, if you want to continue to hear me after the 11th of November, you got to get me on CTV down there. Send them $100 and say, we want Roebke on. We've listened to him some. And see, Jim Bartles is right from a standpoint of a second image. You know, that program when I couldn't say the word evangelical, if you have a second person, they give you a prompt on that. And so that would be important. But the reality is, if you had the privilege and I was on TV, you could have rode with me in my 1985 Plymouth out to Westbrook, I think it's Westport, Minnesota, southeast of Alexandria. I would have shown you some fascinating things what was going on. And I want to give you a little insight. There's basically 1,100-foot tower. There's 2 towers, one by KSTP and the other one's owned by CBS, Frank and Amelia or Angela Davis, whoever you want to call them, or the celebrities that you're familiar with. There's a perfectly good tower. In very short order, they're going to dynamite the cement pilings and going to let that fall in a pile. And My sources tell me they don't want the building to be hit there, but if it is, so be it. And they got some other stuff sitting. There's a bunch of stuff that they got $10 million from old Uncle Sam to do this, to go off the air, and I'm not sure if a cell phone signal has picked up their old channel 7 or somebody else, but that tower is still good. And why would you say that? Because Hubbard Broadcasting just a year or two ago renewed a 10-year contract to have their kick radio on that tower, but with this buyout by Amy Klobuchar and the rest of the FCC overseers that don't know a damn thing about FCC and what they should or shouldn't be doing, but they're there because they have this title called senator or house member, and they're going to dynamite, let it drop. There's a bunch of stuff on there I could use. In fact, after 10 million, why don't they just give it to Alan Roebke? I want him to do a educated scanning of that tower before I take it over, but it's an old tower, just like your one down there, Goodall, or the one down by what's that little town south of Medelia or wherever it is on whatever highway that goes south of Mankato or New Ulm, whatever it is. They're old towers, but they still stand. And I could put my content on there right now. I could do more than that. And there's also some things going on the Hubbard Tower that I could enlighten you on. And but it can't, because I'm not allowed to be on TV because Amy Klobuchar has such a mind-boggling, corrupt FCC that won't sell a channel to me. And they'll let speculators, like the guy who's trying to buy the one in Fargo, or thought I did have it bought, is setting on for 10 years. There's other people out of New York that are for 7 years, and other people in New York, or companies in New York, sitting on channels. There's other channels, other speculative or money makers from the public airways making money by putting reruns on. I want to show you things on a daily basis, and Jim Bartles is right, I need a second voice. But see, on TV, even though I have a radio voice that Bartles always used to pick on me about, and a couple different times when I spoke in New Ulm, I mentioned that, and I laughed just like everybody else. I'm Mr. Average, no hair or limited hair and a scruffy old beard now, and yet at the same time, when I'm on TV, I have a unique niche. People up here, even that hated my guts, and there are in droves, but they would always watch me on TV. Why? Because they could look through my camera lens and they see exactly what I was seeing, even if I wasn't explaining it 100% perfect. You see my point? So you send CTV, David Sunderman, I think it is, and what's the other... There's Brown County Rural Electric Association at Sleepy Eye. There's Federated Rural Electric at Jackson. There's Benco at Mankato. And the other one is, what is it? South Central Electric. See, those guys won't even let me come to a board meeting. Those guys won't even let me look in the building there at the base of the Goodall Tower. And yet, I'm telling you, send them some money. Or if you're a member of that cooperative, give them $7. Like you guys, farmers or landlords out there, look at all the money you're getting for crop insurance subsidy. At least send CTV. If you're sending them electric bill, send them $7 a month, or $9 or whatever it is they take out. It's a good deal. And they advertise as a cheaper option than satellite or cable, which it is, of course. And so send them some money, but tell them we want Alan Roebke, a regional broadcaster, to be on the air. We want to see what he got to see this morning relating to state government at Glenwood. And he'll show you the good, the fair, and the ugly of what's going on here in Fargo, Sioux Falls, any and every place he travels. So, and they have an open channel they can give me, or Amy Klobuchar, if she really represented people, really believed that the public airways were what? Just to serve the public. And her or Tina Smith or Colin Peterson or Tim Walz or any of the Republicans, somebody has to be hold you people accountable. And see, a guy like Alan Roebke that never had any friends, I had acquaintances because I spent millions each year. And so everybody always wants to associate with a million. And George Bush, what he said, nobody has more than 5 or 7 friends. So I probably got 2 or 3, and I'd always try to chase them away by making them mad. And but so in this process of being on radio here, and I need to get back on TV. So if you want to hear me out after the 11th, and Jim Bartles maybe will sell the deal for November, want me to take it for the whole month of November, I'm not going to do that. I'm on the radio through the 11th, and after that, if you want to be informed by Alan Roebke, you got to get me on TV there. Or if you have $25,000, if I could get maybe 5 or up to 10 people that want to invest $25,000 in TV. First and foremost, we'll be on Fargo right now. I got all the equipment up there. It's just North Dakota Public TV. That Torgelson, that Hanska representative that you praise rather than looking at this outrageous tax rate he gives our charities. They give them over $500,000, our Minnesota legislators, and public TV there doesn't turn me off because they want to upgrade everything there. So send me an email at al@informtv.com if you have $25,000 laying around and want a unique investment. We can do some business. I'll give you a high rate of interest or maybe even some shares in it, and so on and so forth. And if you can't get a hold of me, Jim Bartles there, K or J, certainly can. And a closing minute here on farm policy. They're not adapting my farm policy, but I look at what is it, Central Region Co-op there. The price of corn there is $3.12. Beans are $7.54. See, if you adopted the Roebke plan for 1 year, immediately the price of beans would jump $1. Corn would easily jump 50 cents a bushel. And we look at Alton Grain, and in the valley, north between Fargo and Grand Forks, their corn bids are 302 and their bean bids are 707. Just think of what my 303 corn rate and plus going to E11 would do for our farmers and our communities. So the challenge is for you folks. Alan Roebke is informed. He knows what's going on, but he has to have a platform. And CTV or that tower in Fargo, and then a channel in Minneapolis, which Amy Klobuchar can arrange for me like that, but she won't. And I just want you to think about what Alan Roebke just told you this election cycle. Thanks for listening.